assessment is a new concept for many of us. It's a strange concept for some. And during our presentation, we want to provide you with a better understanding of what it is and what it means for the ABA rules. We would like to give you an approach to evaluating assessment tools that we've used, a few simple questions that we learned to ask, and some examples of tools that we've had a chance to review. Not all of them we've used, but we have read up on them as much as we can. And we're going to also share a working document that contains some of those reviews, and it's actually posted on the website now, along with some other materials. So a little about us. We started meeting last December as part of a Cali special interest group on assessment in December. We wanted to learn more about tools and resources that faculty could use for assessment purposes. And in my case, faculty were asking me for reviews of tools, usually quick reviews that they could take to faculty committees, that they could use for interventions in their class. That's what I needed, and the opportunity to work with other faculty was really beneficial to me. So we started talking, we started sharing resources with one another, and this is what we have to share with you today. So who's here? Are there any faculty teaching substantive law courses, or skills courses, or librarians, or IT folks, and vendors? Okay. Well, thank you. So what isn't formative assessment? Well, summative assessment, measurements taken at the end of a course or some kind of instructional unit that are really there to evaluate learning but don't have the intent of providing information back, feedback to the learner or instructor. Final exams, final papers. You could use this information in future semesters, but for the most part you don't. These are usually high stakes, high point items. But formative assessment are measurements taken during the course, usually many of them, for the purpose of improving student learning. And they're often low stakes. They often have a low point value, but not always. And what's crucial to know is that it provides feedback to the instructor and the student. Some examples, quizzes and polls. For example, you might have an open note quiz at the start of a class over readings. That could become the basis for discussion. You learn more about what students comprehend. They learn more about what they're missing. And I listed classroom assessment techniques. There's a book by Angelo and Cross that's really very useful as a recipe book full of assessment techniques you can use in class. It's aimed at a higher education audience. It's kind of old now, but it's still very good and cited often. These are typically ungraded activities too. The minute paper is an example. It's a quick summary of what a student has learned during the class, or just to elicit data about their comprehension of a topic. Another is a one-sentence summary, which requires students to select only the defining features of a topic or lecture. So something very brief that forces them to summarize or paraphrase. You could have a paper submission with early feedback. Many of our faculty do this. They require their students to submit the paper early. They give feedback. Obviously, this takes a lot of time for the professor to do, but they get better results. And midterms, if you get information back to your students, they can improve over the rest of the semester. The goal is really just to help students identify their strengths and weaknesses, target areas that need work, and for you as an instructor, so that you can monitor their learning. You get feedback about what you need to work on, where you can improve your work as a teacher. And Alan, I guess this is your cue to talk about significance for law schools.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Do I need to really talk into this, or?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'll do that. As Will said, my name is Alan Moy. I'm from DePaul College of Law in Chicago. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what this means for law schools. But before I do, just to give you an idea of why I'm doing this, I'm coming off the chairmanship of our assessment committee, which was kind of an interesting thing to do. I don't know if anybody's been involved in that. But what I want to talk to you a little bit about is the ABA standards. As you know, they revised the accreditation standards last year, and they've made some pretty sweeping changes when it comes to learning outcomes and assessments. As far as learning outcomes, basically, schools are now required to come up with learning outcomes that discuss what we want our students to know, what we want them to be able to do, and what we want them to value. As far as the knowledge is concerned, that's going to include substantive and procedural law, As far as skills, it would include critical thinking, legal reasoning, legal research, things of that nature. And as far as value is concerned, if you think about it, we all want our students to walk away as professionals, and we want them to have certain values when it comes to that. If your school has a particular mission, that could also be included in the values. At DePaul, this is kind of awkward because I'm usually a walker. At DePaul, we are Vincentian, and part of our mission is public service. So included in our learning outcomes would be what the students need to do to give back to the community. Pro bono work, volunteer work, that sort of thing. And that could be included in the outcomes as well. So the next step would be assessing those outcomes, because once you establish what the outcomes are, you have to have a process or procedure for assessing them. And as Will pointed out, you have formative and you have summative. Standard 314, this is really awkward. Hold on. Can you all hear me now? Okay. All right. Standard 314 talks about the assessment of student learning. So you have to have both formative and you have to have summative assessments. The purpose is to provide measurement so that you can improve the student's learning. The key is you have to have feedback to the students, which is what Will also talked about. That also feeds into the next standard, which is 315, because the law schools are now also required to provide an evaluation of their program in an ongoing and meaningful way. So in order to determine whether we have actually met our goals of actually having the students achieve the learning outcomes that we set out, we have to evaluate the program on a regular basis. So this sets the tone in terms of why we're doing this and why it's important. So when we started talking about trying to figure out a way, when we started talking about trying to figure out a way to evaluate some of the different tools that were out there, we came up with 7 basic questions when we were looking at these tools. So the first thing we want to do is we'll ask, what is it? Give a quick description of the tool or resource and what it offers. Then we'll talk about the cost. Is there a cost for the students, a cost for the institution, a one-time or recurring cost? Are there any non-economic costs as well? And then ease of adoption. Are there any technical issues that need to be addressed? What is it about this particular tool that's unique or special, if there is anything? And next is the scope. In other words, who provides the content? Is it the vendor? Is it the end user? Is it crowdsourced? And is there some measure of quality control? Who reviews the content, and how easy would it be to review that content? Oops, I keep going the wrong way. And of course, the assessment process. What's the workflow involved? Will faculty and students have to do anything to use the tool? What is it that they have to do to use the tool? And then who receives the assessment information and feedback, and what kind of information is provided? And is it available in class or out of class? I actually looked at 3, but I'm only going to talk about 2. The first one I want to mention is LearnLaw, which I believe one of the reps is here, Dan. We met early this week, and he filled me in on some of the information that I've been missing. I should say that most of this is based upon the information we could get from the vendors, or you do maybe a trial. I actually signed up for LearnLaw. I tested a little bit, and then again talked to Dan. So what is it? It's a web-based collaboration platform that allows students to learn how to share their outlines with other students, to review case law online. It's free, best price ever. But there is a fairly detailed user agreement that I would only recommend that if you do sign up for it, you advise the students to look at it very carefully. As far as ease of adoption, it's pretty straightforward. It's web-based. They just sign up for it. They can review the content that's there. Basically, I think they've loaded in some standard cases that are used for first-year courses, and they're able to practice being able to do to brief the case. What makes it unique and special? It's free. That's one thing. And it is customizable, which I learned when I talked to Dan. As far as the scope, the content is vendor provided, but as I said, they'll customize it. So what I've learned that they'll be able to do is they can take the syllabus for a particular course, and they can actually create a page that the instructor can use for his students. As far as quality control, they have an academic board of advisors. I think they have about 9 to 12 throughout the country of law professors that they consult. And as far as the assessment process, is typically something that's done out of class. The students review the case law. They get directional questions, prompts, and feedback. Here's here's an example. What I liked about it is very minimalist, not a lot of clutter on the page. The students sign up, they immediately get access. They have a law school lingo test. They can apply the knowledge, and then they have some challenges where the students can test their knowledge. Here's an example of what the page looks like. Basically, here's the case, and I actually pulled it up. So the students have to identify where the facts are, what other elements of the case exist, and they'll get some feedback as to whether they got the answer correctly. The other product I looked at was ExamSaw. They're also here. There's ExamSoft in the room. Okay. I swear I didn't know that before I started. I mean, who was going to be a sponsor, who's going to be here, but it worked out nicely because I could get some other information. So ExamSoft is management software supporting the entire testing process. You get a lot of support, customer service. The purpose is it provides actionable data to assess learning outcomes. The cost is going to vary depending on the service package. I think they have 3 different levels of service packages. Let's see. And the cost is recurring with the renewal of the agreement. As far as ease of adoption, it requires careful planning to get it right. I should say that we experimented with this last year with a trial access. I had 2 faculty that tried it. One actually had some difficulty putting the information in. And I think part of the reason was because we hadn't actually completely formulated our learning outcomes yet. So she was kind of just trying to plug some information in, and she wasn't really sure how to map that to what the learning outcomes would be. So it was a little bit difficult. So the only thing I would say is it does require some careful planning. As far as the, let's see. Oh, yeah, what makes it unique, I would only say a lot of people already use ExamSaw, so there's familiarity with the vendors and their products and services. As far as the scope, it combines the assessment creation, administration, scoring analysis all into a single platform. And the content tends to be user-provided, although, and Will's going to talk about this, they have paired up with the Wolters Kluwer package, so that then you can actually get some vendor-created content. The instructors will create questions from a rubric, which they can use to articulate expectations for an assignment or project. Exam questions can be put in. And then for administrators, they can receive from some broad-based information for decisions that are of a larger institutional impact. Yeah, I don't know.
Someone's looking into it. Take a look.
Okay. And as far as the assessment process is concerned, again, the instructor uses the data using learning outcomes, competencies, accreditor, or board assessment, and it can be used in or out of class. The one thing that I would say about this, and for those of you that use it, I think it's better for multiple choice as opposed to using it for essay questions. This is an example of the student report and of the faculty report, and this is the longitudinal report. And I think, Will, you're up.
So this is kind of a hybrid product. It's using ExamSoft's interface, but content, Casebooks from Wolters Kluwer. You do not need to have an ExamSoft subscription to actually use this product, though. It's sold apart from that on a per-student basis. Right now, there are 4 sort of topic areas: constitutional law, torts, civil procedure, and contracts. And under each of those, there are, I guess, 3 casebooks, is what I understood yesterday from talking to some of the folks from Wolters Kluwer. The questions are drafted by the faculty and the casebook by faculty. Actually, I don't know who, but the casebook authors as well. Cost per student, again, I think we just mentioned that. The ease of adoption for this. Well, ExamSoft has a powerful interface. This is going to be something to learn. This is going to be something you're going to have to take the time to look into, to investigate. There's a lot of information that's provided in those reports. But if you're already using one of these casebooks, this might make a lot of sense for your adoption, your use in your course. What really makes it unique is, I guess, the powerful reporting interface, but also the links back to the casebook that are pretty precise. And what does that look like? You have questions that are sorted into folders. These folders are chapters. Individual questions are on the right there. For each question you see, you've got a pre-written question stem, your correct answer is there. You've got categories of learning outcomes. On the left, you're provided with a question rationale. Again, this is what the professor sees. And a reference to the casebook at the bottom. So a list of questions, you can hover to see the answers there, and the categories or learning outcomes are on the left. All right, the only manual step that you need to take to release one of these pre-made assessments if you're an instructor is to name it and post it. The report you get, again, is powerful. I will not go into all of this. But you get lots of information about all of your students globally. You get an item analysis for each question. You can see their low, high, and medium scores. And they're also learning, and these are all sorted by learning outcomes, okay? These are not by question, if I understand that correctly. So. You can also release reports to students. You don't have to release the average score. You can customize this. But the learning outcomes are also listed there. If they scroll down, this is another page in a PDF report that's sent to students. You can see the question, the rationale, along with links to learning outcomes and text, okay? So that's a pretty rapid trip through law class feedback. So.
Okay, I'm going to quickly talk about some course materials that are out there. And we've got West Academic and then Walters Kluwer with their connected casebook. And West Academic deals with a casebook also, their casebooks. And Walters Kluwer practice packs. So, okay, first for West Academic. And just to remind you that West Academic is not Thomson Reuters. So it's a completely different company, and part of the company are the Foundation Press books, and so the academic part of TR. So they call theirs Casebook Plus, and students will receive a print copy of the casebook along with lifetime digital access, self-assessments tied to the text, and additional digital study resources. So they, make it available if you purchase. You assign the students the West Academic Casebook, and these are your links to exactly which ones they have right now. And they also, if your student buys a used casebook, then they can utilize it too. So it's not hinged on new casebooks. You can see for the students what they're looking for. These are all material that's provided to you from West Academic. So you have quizzes written for that textbook, and they then lead you to Hornbook. They're, the West resources. They have an outline and Gilbert Law Dictionary, and again, lifetime access to the digital book, plus all the digital study material. And again, faculty help students understand classroom materials, key to that particular text. Again, these are all provided by West Academic. So, now Walters Kluwer has what they call a connected casebook. West was West Academic was Casebook Plus. So Kluwer's connected casebook, same basic idea that you pick up a Kluwer's casebook, one which they have all this information in it. And again, purchase or rental, lifetime access to a digital book, and the digital study material. So the instructor side, you can do similar things than in the West. You can gather you're gathering, they have assessment materials. You decide to use them, then you're going to gather information about the student. So multiple choice questions, hypothetical short answers, essay, issue spotting. These are all designed for use with the specific casebook. And they have, if you're interested in taking a look, you know, a student FAQ, a faculty FAQ, tips and tutorials, you know, all ready to go to actually use it. So there are certain casebooks that they have selected. And also if you want to, this is from a flyer that they have, and Walter's Kluwer is downstairs, and you know, I'm sure they'd be like to, this is the flyer from Casebook Connect. So that is the Walter's Kluwer product. And Walter's Kluwer also has another product called the Practice Packs, and this is very different in as much, this is not a product where you have to use a Walter's Kluwer casebook. This product can be used with, you know, any type of, you know, materials. Casebook, your own materials, however you might like to use it. So it's as they say, it offers a way to integrate a practical component into a course. And it has to, you can see the, you know, the purchase. And what it is this is, you know, a sample of what they have. It's a, as they say, it's a teaching resource. And so this is just, and this was written for contracts and a faculty member at University of North Dakota. So a faculty member has written these resources that you can use wherever possible, wherever you'd like to use in your class. And there's 6 short practice skills-based exercises. And there's a faculty manual that goes with them, so you can, you know, gives you some ideas of when you might want to use them in class. But so this is a different type of product that anyone can use with any type of course materials. And they're just beginning, and here's what it would look like: rubric, sample handout, student exercise, teacher notes. So they're, you know, beginning to get different topics. They don't have a full array now, but they're working on different, you know, different topics to do. So that's kind of 3 different course materials. And then,
all right. Wow, what a density of information. So as you can tell, we're not handing you chocolate bars, or we're handing you M&Ms here. So that gives you a flavor, because there's a million ways to do assessment, and there's a million tools to do the million ways of assessment. And one of them is Cali lessons, of course. So Cali lessons, you're already very familiar with them. You know sort of what they look like. Students can take them and they get immediate formative assessment. They get feedback from answering the questions. Did I get it right or wrong? They also, at the end of it, will get a score, which they can print a little certificate, and that score is saved in their profile on the Cali website, right? Now, they can also, you know, see which ones they got right and which ones they got wrong if they want to go back and do more study, or take the tests, take the Cali lessons as often as they want. There is a tool in Cali called Lesson Link, and so it's an overlay on top of lessons. It's where faculty can create a permanent URL that links to a lesson, exactly the same as if you go through the website, except when a student runs a lesson on the website, only they can see their scores. When a faculty member creates a lesson link, then the student and the faculty member can both see their scores. So it's sort of like turning off privacy on a Cali lesson for just running that lesson. Now, why would you want to do that? Because then the faculty member can see how many people ran the lesson and click on details, or download the whole thing as a CSV to stick into Excel and run their own reports, and see how well. I just did a really quick sample and obviously ran my own lesson twice. Did better the second time because I wrote down the answers. And so the faculty member can see how well someone's doing on a test, or sorry, on a Cali lesson. Auto-publish was the last thing, and it's basically the exact same procedure, except it's using a piece of software that we've written called Cali Author that you can download and install, Windows only for now. And then you can either write your own assessment questions, multiple choice questions, or if you ask our permission nicely, which is not hard to do, we'll let you start from an existing Cali lessons and modify it, and then hit the auto-publish button, which sends the whole thing up to the Cali website, and then the same overlay of being able to see the students' answers can happen, all right? The other tool that I'm supposed to talk about, I can't say I used it because I didn't take a class in which it was, but I did some sample usages of it, is called Perceptive. Now, of all the tools that we looked at, Perceptive, in my opinion, is the most interesting because it's trying to do the hardest thing. It's trying to assess writing and critical thinking skills. Students assess each other based on your rubric, and getting that rubric right and getting the students to understand your rubric so that they can use it to assess other students' work is really hard, right? It's not the software that's hard, it's the task that you're trying to do here. Now, it's based on 10 years of research. Was it last year or 2 years ago? Kevin Ashley, who's an artificial intelligence researcher, actually gave a talk about it when it was called SWORD at the Cali conference. You should watch his video if you can find it on our YouTube channel. And here's the key. As students assess each other, their feedback becomes indistinguishable from feedback by the instructor. All right? Let me emphasize that. The students assess each other, and as they get better at doing that, then he's proven, or the research has proven, that their feedback is indistinguishable from you, from the experts. So you can, within the narrow scope of getting the rubric right and getting the students to understand the rubric, and it's a short answer situation. We're not talking 100-page, essays or things like that. A student can assess another student as well as you can with a little bit of practice. So imagine that. That's a super powerful idea that you can then offload assessment and have the students be doing it for each other. That, I think, is a little bit mind-blowing. It takes a while for students because the students have to practice their assessing and they get feedback on their assessments as well within the system, all right? Students learn from the assessment, and obviously they learn from doing assessment of others. They see, not just their own errors, but they see the errors of how other people can do it. And I have a link here for a brief tour, but we're moving along really fast, so I'm going to skip past that. The other thing that I looked at is Anki and spaced repetition, a whole nother different way of thinking about formative assessment. So both of them are based on a theory that basically says you can memorize lots of facts, hundreds of facts, not if you just constantly read them to yourself or flashcard them to yourself, but that if you get them back at spaced periods of time, and if you evaluate how well you understand them. So the way both Anki and spaced repetition work is you either create a card deck, or in the case of spaced repetition, he's had some law faculty create some card decks for the product, and you do 10 cards at first, and then you evaluate whether I got that or I don't got that. Like a Likert scale, 1 through 5. I really understand that one. The ones you really understand, you're going to see less. The ones you still have some doubt in your mind, you're going to see a little bit more. And then a day later, you'll get 10 more cards, but they'll be mixed in with some of the cards, especially the ones that you rated at a 1. And then 2 days later, you'll get 20 more cards, and so on and so on and so on. So basically, Anki and spaced repetition are two different pieces of software that manage that process, the authoring of flashcards and the delivery of them in a spaced period of time to students. Where does the formative assessment come from? Well, the formative assessment is the student looking at those cards and saying, I got this, and getting through being able to know the answer or know what 1,000 or 500 or 250 complex terms in law or in the subject that they're studying mean, right? So it's actually true formative assessment because it's instantaneous feedback on whether they recognize a word or a term or a concept or a case or something like that, right? This is the Wikipedia article in spaced repetition. There it is, learning technique that incorporates increasing intervals of time doing subsequent review of previously learned materials to exploit the psychological spacing effect. I love that.
So is there any data captured for like your class?
No, not in either of them. They're right at this point, both of those are essentially just the student doing the formative assessment for themselves. although I might be wrong on spaced repetition, but I think I am. So spaced repetition was created by Gabe Tenenbaum. He's a law professor at Suffolk, specific just to the law area. Oh wait, I'm talking about Anki here still, sorry. From card layout, open source. Anki is open source, so it's fully free. They do have a collection of user-created law ones, but they're all over the map in terms of quality, size, and country of origin. So it's sort of like what you go. Spaced repetition is $5 a month or $50 a year. There are access to free decks, and there is a growing community of people contributing new ones. There are some subject-specific decks. They're very small, and like I said, it was created by Gabe Tenenbaum at Suffolk.
And so the last tool that we're going to talk about here today is Barbary AMP, which, to distinguish it from Perceptive, first of all, it's basic knowledge and recall, where Perceptive is doing a lot of work with student feedback and information like that. It was emphasized to me when I was looking at this that it's really all about basic recall of MPRE practice tests and black letter law. It has a very interesting way of providing feedback, though, and I thought that was important to mention. It's sold as part of an institutional package. Some of you may have it. But it's a test of both accuracy and a student's confidence. So what does the interface look like? This is the best way to get this across. The question is there, your choices are there, and you have some slots over here for sure, and you can drag your answer to this box. When you're not sure, you're prompted to give 2 answers, and when you don't know. So, okay, you're sure of this answer. You drag that answer over to the sure box, but it turns out you're wrong, and then you come to the next screen, it gives you the correct answer, and you have a link on the right that brings you to an explanation. And some additional materials, MPRE practice tests, which you can go to afterwards. All right, so when you're partially sure what happens, you can drag your answers. If you have one that's correct, you get a hint, and then you go back and answer that question again. And if you answer a question correctly twice with certainty, then you're said to have mastered that question, and you won't see it again. It'll be removed from that deck. They're not using the same kind of principles as spaced repetition, but I'm sure they're thinking along the same lines. The student reporting interface, yeah, it's pretty high level. You can see what you've worked on there, at least in this grade. You know, what you've mastered, this is probably the sort of interface you're going to see while taking your quiz. But you can also go back and review your performance on any question or topic. Instructors, you have a good deal more information. And this is hard to see, I know, but I'll try to walk through it. So you can monitor individual student progress. So each line there, even though you can't read that, that's a student name. Those names are all fake. They're not real. Blue would refer to the completed modules. Yellow are modules in progress in that column. The blue here refers to time spent answering questions, and the yellow on time spent looking at explanations. Okay. So clicking through, and when you get an answer wrong, you're looking at the rationale and the other materials. And finally, the breakdown of accuracy and confidence. Red is if you're sure, but incorrect, and green if you're sure and correct, and everything in between. So those were the tools we wanted to cover. There are more in the document that we're sharing with you, and you may be thinking, why didn't they review this product or this tool? There's tons. Even today at lunch, I was listening to someone remind me of a tool that we should have included. But we would like to continue this process. We'd like to collaborate with others. We'd like to get your favorite assessment tool and what you know about it, because we can't possibly cover them all. If you'd like to do so, the most efficient way to do this right now is just to email John and say you want to be a part of the Cali Assessment
It's
Special
a Google
Features
group, so I need to add you to the list.
Right.
That's why that.
And if you have questions, now would be a great time to ask them.
I was just wondering, when you're using these different tools, are any of them capable of assessing both answers that are traditional, such as a quiz, multiple choice, and having a student be online, perhaps using Lexis Advance or Westlaw, and doing research so that they can use both, and you could somehow prevent them from going anywhere else on the internet.
Could you repeat that one
No,
more?
no, you repeat the question.
Because I heard most of it. Basically, here's what I understood, is within these assessment tools, can you have a student using multiple resources, online resources, while taking the assessment? I don't know. I actually think that there's some options within ExamSoft I'm aware of to lock down the internet, while you can still use other resources on the machine. John?
Yeah, lock down the internet, but not allow you to use some parts of the internet and not others, like lock you away from browsers. So what you're talking about is pretty complex, maybe technically impossible. Yeah.
The response is lockdown browser permits you to have particular URLs that are accessible. All the rest of it is locked down.
Yeah, well, sure, you can lock a browser. You can lock a browser, but then you can alt tab to another browser, or there's, I mean, if Tom Ryan were here, he'd be laughing about the ability to break something like that so easily. So I wouldn't want to trust a high stakes exam on it. A formative assessment, sure, because if you cheat on formative assessment, you're just cheating yourself.
So you, sir, and then Terry.
So which ones work the best and which ones do you guys like the most? Please.
Which ones work the best? Which ones we like the most? I can say for part of my goal was to make sure that I represented these things as factually as I could when I brought it back to my faculty. And especially since I haven't had a lot of hands-on experience with it. This is based on my reading, brochures, webinars, and conversations. So
So you declined to answer for lack of experience, which is completely respectable.
Will people here use them? Can we get some?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it depends on what you're looking for, and there may be some users in the room that can speak to it. I mean, I had a trial with ExamSaw, but we haven't gone all the way with it, so.
Yeah, this isn't apples and oranges, this is fruit salad. It really depends on your goals, and I have a feeling a lot of faculty coming to this don't know even what their goals are until they've gotten into the formative assessment game and come to understand it. I will say this, none of them are easy to use. Even the ones that are easy to use are not easy to use because you still have to think about how you're going to integrate it into your coursework. So please don't tell your faculty that this is just something you drop in and now we can tell the ABA to go away. They really need to engage with this stuff. This is core to your teaching.
and when you get that question, that sort of prompt to drop it into your class, as I was talking to Deb earlier, that's just an invitation to kind of explain what the adoption would be like technically in terms of the curriculum of the class. There was a question, yes.
With some of them that are there any FERPA issues with requiring your students to use something like that LearnLaw or?
So the question was, are there any FERPA issues, particularly with LearnLaw?
Yeah, I don't know, is Dan still here? No? He was the rep. I don't think so, but again, there is a fairly extensive user agreement that you would want your students to kind of look at to make sure, in terms of the kind of information that they're giving up. I don't think there are any issues with it, but.
So are you thinking because some students can see other students' work, or?
I'm thinking of the company having access to who the students are and how they're performing. They choose to.
Well, they do it voluntarily.
Well, I'm saying if I require that as an instructor,
Yeah, I guess they
that
can.
might, that's not voluntary.
Yeah.
It's also not, if it's formative assessment, it's not a grade because it's not being used to provide.
But what the company
With
says.
information.
And it's not permanent.
It's also some assessments of judging exams.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting new question and dimension to add to our review. How FERPA affects this
issues,
particular
yeah.
product. So,
Great, anybody know a FERPA attorney?
yes.
So, I heard you talk about it, but how can we use Cali for the formative assessment? And, because they're wanting us to do like the test at the beginning and then another one at the end. So is there a way we can use Cali for that?
Sure, well, I mean, you could assign the same Cali lesson at the beginning and the end. The smart students will remember or record their answers, and then when they take it the second time, get a perfect score. Or if they're aware. But you could write your own Cali lessons or Cali-like lessons and auto-publish them and make them different such that they're the same, that they cover the same material, but they ask the question differently and assess it that way.
Yes.
I have a question about the Casebook Connect and the Casebooks tests. Will the students only get access to that assessment tool if they either own or rent? So what if they checked out the Casebook through the library reserve system? Is there some way, do they restrict, is it like
Well,
one
Sorry,
account
repeat the
for
question first.
Casebook? or-
Sure, the question was about Casebook Connect and whether if a student did not purchase the book and checked it out from the library instead, if they could still have access to the assessment, is that right? Okay.
I would think not. I mean, because it's got to be,
How are they gonna make the money?
well, no, because you're going to have, the Casebook itself is, you know, that code is for one student. So, yeah, it's not going to work to, yeah, it's for one student. And also you want it that way because the student wants to know how the student himself or herself is progressing. So, yeah, and so you have to figure out if you want to use one of those Wolters Kluwer or West Academic Casebook first, and then you have the, you know, option to have the student then purchase, you know, this additional material and, yeah, kind of go from there. So.
Sir.
Just in regards to the gentleman who asked the question about that you can use, I've used actually something called Socrative.com. That actually worked really well with formative assessments. You could actually make it anonymous as well for the students. So that was one that really helped. It was quick. I could really do it in a matter of moments. I could actually write the question down on the board or actually say it right there and then and take the poll or have a multiple choice question as well. So that was really helpful.
So I guess for listeners elsewhere, it's Socrative that you're recommending that is a really flexible tool with,
Yeah, and it's free.
yeah, and it's free.
What is it called again?
Yes, I think it's the poll.
Socratic.com.
Yes.
SOCARTIV.
E. It's getting E.
Oh, they added the E?
Yeah.
Oh.
If you look at the historical chronology on all of this, Cali obviously been around the longest, but Kluwer, and I've used that 6 years ago, has been really working to refine their product for quite a long time. They're very good. For those of you who want to give it a shot. They also do the reporting, but my question is, West is new to the game in terms of a lot of this. Are they even reporting back the results if requested to the faculty? I didn't see any reporting on that handout, so I'm curious about that. What good is the tool unless they're actually giving feedback also to the faculty? But at least from a chronological standpoint, all of these probably have their place. And the question is, who do you trust?
So the
Well,
co-
and with the course books, it's whose course book if you're using a Wolters Kluwer, you might go that direction. You know that, and like that casebook, if you're using it at West Academic, you might go in that direction. If you want to do something, the Wolters Kluwer practice patch, you could use with anyone, and then you don't have to change yours, but it does give you some, you know, something to start with. Because obviously, you can write your own rubric and your own questions and, you know, go from there. For some of these, it's a kind of first step in. Let me see what the first step in, and then I can really go from there and then do a Cali lesson or, you know, do something on your own.
So I'd love to pick up on that, but I'm going to defer picking up on it to my session at 4, where I'll talk about the future of Cali. But I will say this, the fact that course content is now software is going to be problematic. It won't be the book that has stayed the same for 10 or 15 years. It'll be changing every semester or every year. There's value to the vendors to do that because that keeps the subscriptions coming, and there's value to you because there's going to be improvements in features and in capabilities. And so, this is becoming a software market rather than a content market, as you can clearly see by all the interactivity that everybody is trying to provide for learning.
yes.
So my question actually dovetails nicely with what you just said. I know students who do their best to get through, sometimes without buying any books, and these things often seem to be bundled with a book. And as was just discussed, maybe you can't get the data from a student, the assessment data from a student without them purchasing it. They might not be able to do that. So I'd like to know, will the ABA standards and sort of the enforcement of those standards mean that students will not be able to do that anymore? Like if I assign something that's formative assessment, but make it optional, like, you know, if they don't buy the book, how can they do it? Or if they don't buy the extra pack that goes with the book, how can they do it? That feels like a cop-out on the ABA standards, and I don't know that they would let that fly. So
How would you know they didn't buy the book?
if they don't have access to purchasing, like if a student only uses the reserved copy from the library,
Oh, I see.
then they don't have access to the account
You'll
that
know
came
that
with that
because
number.
Because you have to give the, you know, to turn on the digital access, and you have to have a code, right?
Yeah.
So the library book is not gonna have that code with it.
Exactly. So those students, they're not going to
You're
be able
gonna know that
to
the
fulfill the
instructor-
assessment requirement.
Yeah.
And if I make it optional, am I not complying, like, not having the, like, how is that going to play out?
Yeah, that remains to be seen. I think the thing is, there's no, the ABA hasn't told us what kind of formative assessments we have to use, and you just have to come up with something. I think in a case like that, you want to try to introduce something that would be available to all the students, and maybe in that case, you wouldn't use that.
West Academic, you can buy it separately from the book. Walter Kluwer is working on it. That's what the rep just said.
And then
So
Walter
if they
Kluwer
get
has
the
the
book-
practice packs too, which is completely
But
separate.
that's separate. But the Walter Kluwer Case Connect is currently tied to purchasing the book, but they're working on making it separate, which obviously they need to do. But West, you can purchase separate.
Thank you.
So a lot of LMSs have rubric and assessment systems. I guess that requires the faculty member to build it themselves. But has anyone used any Blackboard?
Want to repeat the question?
So I guess the question was around LMSs. Well, LMSs provide rubric tools, among other things. There's functionality there. It requires that faculty actually create the rubrics or have them borrow them from someone else.
Or the multiple choice questions, or the...
Or the multiple choice
question
questions,
banks.
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, we don't, at my particular institution, we don't use Blackboard or Canvas, we use Moodle. Many faculty do create multiple choice items, it's a lot of work. Some of them have been worked with students to create question stems, and then they refine the actual responses and feedback on them. There have been many that have created rubrics. I mean, this is something I think a lot of faculty do, but it does take time.
I know some open access textbooks have created ancillary materials like quizzes and things to go with them in PowerPoint slides. Is Elaine Dell thinking about doing that, or?
Now I am.
Okay. Just an idea.
We have some.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we do have one casebook out that includes, it includes links out to third-party material, and then links also to Cali lessons. People have offered me PowerPoint slides, so as they offer them with the materials, we are collecting them, putting them in a tight wrapper so no one can ever see them. No, I'm teasing. And making them available, obviously. I just want to make sure we were listening here.
Okay. You're right, the Cali lessons are ideal, just pair them up with the appropriate.
I think it would be cool to have an SSR, I'll use the term, SSRN for PowerPoint slides from faculty. I know a lot of faculty have posted their PowerPoints on SSRN. I mean, what if we had 10,000 of those up there and people could share them and reuse them and see how each other teaches? That would blow my mind.
Yes.
So one of the problems we've had is generating the questions to use for formative assessment. If you want to use good multiple choice questions, they're very hard to draft, and the questions drafted by one professor might work very well so long as you were taught that year by that professor. And so one of the things we used to do before all of the online stuff got so big, I'm going back to the 90s now, is a bunch of the AALS listservs, we used to share our multiple choice questions under an agreement of confidentiality, that they would not be released. And so, you know, I still have collections of questions. They're not in digital form because they were like, they were photocopied back then, but that's something that we could create communities to do, but it does require the compliance of not releasing the multiple choice questions, because once you do that, then you actually can create the statistics now, and you could do them in a way, but it would require, again, agreement. And some people were better about keeping that agreement than others, and when you suddenly see your questions on the internet because someone else released them, it is disincentive to that.
Well, or you just have a big enough pool that no student who has access to the pool will be able to memorize the answers to all of them.
Issues of if some of them have access to the pool and others don't find it, they've had access to the and you don't necessarily put the answers up there. But
Well, if you have a big enough pool, then you make it open. Because, you know, you tell the students, I'm going to give you a quiz, a formative quiz in this case. It's going to be 10 questions long, and it's one of these 1,000 questions. It's 10 of these 1,000 questions. So if the student bothers to memorize the answers to the 1,000 questions,
No, you're right
he
there, that's
deserves
fine.
the high grade. Or the positive formative feedback.
Bonnie, question of, I guess, an open pool, open source content area. If someone were to draw from that and put it into content of one of these products, do any of these products make claim on that once it's in their software? College? Can they?
Actually, I think LearnLaw might. I think LearnLaw might. Now, and actually, I don't know, Dan, do you want to read the question?
Yeah, so if, say we've got an open content source, questions, PowerPoint, whatever, somebody draws from that or from their own work, they drop it in LearnLaw, do you guys make any claim on that content itself?
I don't think we would. If there's any confusion about our user agreement, we can clear it up. That's not what we do, you know.
Are there any other questions? These are some great suggestions, questions, comments, things for us to consider as we go forward. And if you'd like to talk more about this with us, please consider signing up.
And also you can go to the program, right? Because you took those slides and.
Yes, to repeat, the slides, our document, it's a working document. It's
a Google Doc.
It's in process. And a very brief bibliography we've collected are under the conference page. So thank you very much for coming. Thanks for coming, Eric.
Right, so that would be browser compatible. Oh, it's different than people that come to the website. I mean, our lessons are all on the web because so many students have it. But our operating system is it's a little bit of an awkward browser.
Yeah.
give them the option. We'll check
I think once we have a product.
Well, I think the law
You're going to have a good reception.
Maybe we'll see it.
Yeah, I'll go back and
Oh, you're up.
It is on topic for the proposal we were talking about. Alex and I are going to do an ed tech update. Basically, we're going to rise to yes, you just. Because that has to come up with and I don't know if it's our competition like we do that ourselves. Everybody else. So we don't understand what their concerns are, what their challenges are, and what technologies they're really interested in, where they're focused. And we're going to lose out because law, we're going to be special by ourselves anyway. And that's no longer the case. People want law and they're choosing to want something else. Basically, they're going to get offering skills from another grad degree that also happens to have like that whiz bang technology. And the answer is not. So I'm not sure what we're saying dynamic.
Oh, yes. We want to make sure we say, lots of things.
Are you going to use this?
Alex, where do you want to go? You want to go from your laptop or do you want to go from this? All right, we're going to use the podium. So he's going to get us set up in a minute. I'm going to use the washroom, so I'll be right back.
Is this your phone?
That is my phone.
Okay,
that's where my notes are going to come from.
Okay.
I'm going to recommend everybody come down a few rows because I was sitting towards the back and it was super stuffy. And I found myself like sitting in that property class, I'm really into what you're saying, and now I'm like, I'm doing it. Amazing brainstorm, which was very about that. Yeah, it's not like construction, but no, I think it's just writing.
Yeah, it was quite intense.
Yeah, it also sounds like when people were talking today, that there's so many overhead mics, but I was having trouble. I've been in the room this morning, it was okay, but this time I was having a little more trouble hearing. All right, so you get set up, and then I will be back in a minute. All right, sounds good.
You were saying that you were hunting around your hotel. That's
Never mind, he found it.
Well, not from here. You have to walk. I walk down there. Is it 5 points? You get out of 5 points.
Where are you trying to go?
Oh, from here to, this is like Labor Day weekend for book festival?
Yeah, you need the east-west version. Does it go all the way to Decatur now?
Is that?
It goes all the way to Decatur now, wow, we've come a long way.
Yep.
Because remember last time we were here, what we did,
Yeah, you gotta walk out of 5 points.
we were staying across the street, okay. That's all we can.
Or you can take it down to 5 points and change, you don't have to
Yeah.
walk.